Module 5, the Adaptation 3-Step Test. There is no list of eligible adaptation activities. Nothing corresponding to tables 2 to 12 exists on the adaptation side. Looking for one wastes time. The joint methodology for tracking climate change adaptation finance was published in 2022, and it works differently. It describes its own approach as context-specific, granular, and conservative. Eligibility is decided by a test applied to project documents. It is not decided by matching an activity to a catalog. The consequence is that the same physical asset can qualify in one project and not in another. A drainage design is not eligible because it is drainage. It is eligible if 3 links can be shown. The documents decide this, not the concrete. For investment and program loans and grants with known use of proceeds, the methodology requires 3 steps. Step 1 is setting out the project's context of vulnerability to climate change. Step 2 is making an explicit statement of intent of the project to reduce the climate change vulnerability. Step 3 is articulating a clear and direct link between specific project activities and the climate change vulnerability identified in Step 1. The methodology has its own process diagram, and it shows these as gates. Step 1 asks whether the context of climate change vulnerability has been set out. If the answer is no, the assessment ends. If the answer is yes, Step 2 asks whether there is an explicit statement of intent to reduce the identified vulnerability. If the answer is no, it ends. If the answer is yes, Step 3 asks whether there is a direct link between the project activities and the identified vulnerabilities. If the answer is no, it ends. Only when all 3 answers are yes does the assessment continue to classification and attribution. There is no partial credit for passing 2 of 3. The methodology is specific about what each step requires. For Step 1, the context of vulnerability to experienced and anticipated impacts of climate change must be set out clearly, using a robust evidence base. Project documents may refer to existing analyses and reports. They may also refer to original bespoke assessments. Information should come from trusted sources documenting the vulnerability of communities, physical assets, or ecosystems. The analysis should use recent climate trends, including any departures from historic means. These should be combined with climate change projections drawn from a range of climate model simulations, and this must include high and low greenhouse gas emission scenarios. The full range of projected impacts and uncertainties must be explored, and projection uncertainties must be presented and interpreted transparently. One requirement is easy to miss and frequently decisive. The timescale of projected climate change impacts should match the intended lifespan of the activities being financed. That is a real test that can be failed. A 30-year asset justified by a 10-year projection has a mismatch, and a technical reviewer will find this immediately. Some activities do not have clear lifespans. The methodology names certain nature-based solutions and investments in operational expenses. An appropriate timescale must still be considered and stated for these. For Step 2, the context must be established first. Then the project documents should set out the explicit intention to address the identified vulnerabilities. The methodology is deliberately flexible about how that intent is demonstrated. There is no prescribed form of words. There is no required document, but it attaches 2 conditions. The project must not exacerbate vulnerabilities beyond the project boundary. The project must not be inconsistent with relevant adaptation strategies and plans. The methodology names national adaptation plans, nationally determined contributions, and long-term strategies or other relevant policy documents. Intent is flexible in form and constrained in substance. A statement of intent that conflicts with the country's national adaptation plan is a problem. It is not a formality. For Step 3, the requirement is a clear and direct link between specific project activities and the vulnerability identified in Step 1. The word specific carries the weight. The link runs from an identified vulnerability to a named activity. It does not run to the project in general. It does not run to the sector. Most weak adaptation claims fail here, and the failure has a recognizable shape. Exposure is presented as though it were eligibility. An asset located in a flood-prone area is not adaptation finance because of where it stands. Something about the financed activity must respond to the documented vulnerability. A useful question to put to every candidate is what is different because of the identified risk. A design could be changed. A capacity could be increased. A protocol could be introduced. An institution could be strengthened. Information could be provided. If nothing is different, there is no direct link. This is true whatever the project title says. A requirement shapes the whole calculation, and it is stated separately from the 3 steps. Adaptation finance estimations consider only the finance allocated to specific project activities, and these activities must be clearly linked to the context of vulnerability identified in Step 1. Therefore, projects are disaggregated into discrete activities where possible. Adaptation finance is attributed only to the activities that clearly respond to the context. Each project activity is then assessed as an adaptation activity or as not relevant for adaptation. A project should be treated as a whole only where it is not possible to break it down into activities. Disaggregation is the default. Whole project treatment is the exception. A consultant who assesses at project level when the cost table supports activity level has not applied the methodology and has almost certainly overstated the amount. Each candidate should be recorded as a single chain. The chain includes the hazard and its source. It includes the exposed system or population and the vulnerability. It includes the explicit objective and where it is stated. It includes the financed activity or design change, and it includes the explanation of the direct link. The chain should be read as a reviewer would. The question is whether any link rests only on a label. Climate resilient in a project title is not evidence of anything. If a link depends on the adjective, the activity is not yet eligible. Passing all 3 steps establishes that an activity is an adaptation activity. It does not tell how much of its finance may be counted. Module 6 covers the classification that decides the amount.